What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Therapy on Two Wheels. Today, I'm going to be talking about this Yamaha Bolt that I bought with 50,000 miles on it. I'll tell you the good things, the bad things that I've learned over the past year of owning this and riding it about 5,000 miles. So let's go ahead and start it up and jump right in. So we're going to start off today with the 10 things that I do like about this bike. And I've had it for about a year. I put close to 5,000 miles on it. And the first thing I'd say that I really like about this bike is how inexpensive it was to purchase. I bought this bike for right around $2,000 on OfferUp. Again, it does have higher mileage. It's a 2014 model, so it's a little bit older as well. But if you are looking for just a short commuter bike or something for the weekends that you can take that's going to be inexpensive, especially inexpensive to maintain, you can be looking at something like this Yamaha Bolt, which you can find a lot of these for around $3,000 to $4,000 on somewhere like OfferUp or Facebook Marketplace, depending on the mileage and the age of the bike, and plenty of them for under $5,000 to $6,000. Because I think these are around $9,000 to $10,000 new, just depending on the model that you have. This is the 2014 model year, and this is the R spec. So kind of one of the top of the line, a little bit better than the base model that they sell as well. One of the other great things about this bike is that there's a ton of aftermarket parts that are available. You can do Amazon, Revzilla, Partzilla. There's a lot of places that you can go to get aftermarket parts for this bike. And there's also a lot of forums that people talk about different upgrades that they've done on their bike and have suggestions for parts that you can get for it. And I've done a few modifications on the bike myself. It already came with a few modifications, but there's a huge aftermarket available for the Yamaha Bolt, which is fantastic to see. And they're still making the bike now, so they're going to continue making those aftermarket parts and new things for even those new model years as well. The maintenance on this bike is relatively easy. If you're looking for a bike that you're going to do a lot of your own maintenance on and you want something that's a little cheaper, a little easier, this is going to be a great bike for you. I've done quite a few things on the bike myself, including changing out the clutch plates. I've done a couple of oil changes on the bike. I've done the brake fluids as well. I've done some of the maintenance just checking the belt on the bike to make sure the tension's right. And even with a simple toolkit, I was able to do the majority of things that I needed on this bike. The only thing that I could not figure out myself, and it's part of my bad list as well, was hooking up that aftermarket LED light in the front. So another good thing about this bike is that it gets great gas mileage. It's going to get somewhere in the 50 to 60 mile per gallon range, depending on your riding style. If you're bringing the throttle out as much as you can every single time, you go from light to light, or you're going 95 on the freeway, your gas mileage is going to dip quite a bit. But if you are driving it more economically, you can definitely get closer to that 60 miles per gallon out of this bike. I think this bike is kind of in the sweet spot in terms of who is going to be riding this bike. It's got 60 horsepower, it's got 60 pound-feet of torque, and realistically, that's enough for most people for general riding. If you're going to be doing something like long hauling across the US or something like that, not the best bike for that. It's not really what it's meant for. But for most riders, if you're a newer rider, you're a little bit more mature, you know that you're not going to be twisting the throttle as much as you can every single time you hop on the bike, this will be something that's manageable for you, because you can go easy on the throttle. It's really easy to ride. You can see I'm managing this on a twisty, windy road, going low speeds just with one hand the entire time. It's very easy to manage. If you are a younger rider, you might want to look at something like a 250cc or 300cc bike first. Get comfortable just being on a bike, and not getting yourself into too much trouble with the amount of power that the bike has, because this does have enough power, especially in that second to third gear. It'll kick pretty hard, especially with the torque that it has. I think this is a perfect second bike for those individuals that do come from a 250 or 300cc bike, whether that's a cruiser or a sport bike. If you got a sport bike, you're looking to get into cruisers now, it's a great step up for you because it still has manageable amount of power. The seat height is relatively low. I believe it's around 29 inches for the seat height on this bike, and wet weight, you're looking at about 540 pounds. So kind of in that middle weight. It's not your 300cc, 300-pound cruiser, and it's also not going to be a 900-pound gold wing. Somewhere right in the middle. So for most people, this is going to be manageable. If you're, say, probably 5'4" or taller, you're going to have no problem at least getting both feet on the ground, if not flat footing. If you are a taller individual, though, I'm going to speak to this in the bad, that is a little bit of a different story. But if you're a shorter individual, smaller individual, it's a great middleweight bike for you to have that's going to have plenty of power to do most things that you need each day. The main competitors of this bike are going to be the Harley-Davidson Iron 883, as well as the Indian Scout. Both of those are going to have right around the same horsepower, right around the same torque, close to the same weight. The big difference is going to be the pricing. On the Harley or the Indian, you're looking at close to double the price, especially on the used market. If you're looking for a used 883, you'd be lucky to find one for under $5,000, even at 15, 20 years old. Same thing with your Indians. These bikes, you can get most of them under about $5,000 when they're used, and they're only about $9 or $10,000 when they're brand new. So you're looking at least a 50% decrease after a few years of ownership by somebody that's looking to sell it. So if you are considering a Harley 883 or considering the Indian Scout, take a look at this one, especially if you are on a budget, or maybe you're not too into the name brand stuff. You don't care to have a Harley or an Indian just for the name, and you just want something that's going to be reliable, get you from point A to point B, and relatively inexpensive. This is a great alternative to those bikes. A lot of forums and a lot of videos, people talk about this. They call it the Harley killer, just because for entry-level bikes in terms of cruisers, puts up a good fight against the Harley as well as the Indian. Now these engines, because partially it's Yamaha, they're going to run for a really long time. I mentioned this one already has 50,000 miles on it. I'd imagine it can go to 100,000 miles with proper maintenance, and just making sure I take care of everything. So these are meant to be bikes that can last for a long time. The last thing on my good list, is more personal, is I love the sound of this aftermarket exhaust. It's Vance & Hines exhaust. It's definitely a lot louder than the original exhaust that was on here. I did not put this on, the previous owner put it on, but I've heard these bikes in person with the original exhaust, and it's just, it's kind of lackluster. It doesn't have a lot of grunt to it, but I love this exhaust to give it a little bit of kick here. Got a low growl, got a little, almost a backfire out of the back too. So it definitely has a good sound. So now onto the bad things on my list. You know, this is the 2014 model year, and one of the big gripes of these years is this LCD screen here. With the LCD screen, it is very hard to see during the day, especially at dawn or dusk, you know, when direct light is hitting it and the sun is low. You can't see anything on that LCD screen. It is very difficult to see, especially the speedometer. So a lot of times, especially on the surface streets, I'm not entirely sure how fast I'm going, just kind of go with the flow of traffic. But that is one of the biggest pain points of this bike, is not being able to see that LCD screen. You don't have gear indicator, so besides neutral, so that doesn't matter too much. But more so, you want to know the speed, you want to know if your gas light is on. It's really hard to see everything that's on that screen. They did update that though for the 2015 year. So this is really just for the first model year in 2014 that LCD screen was an issue. One of the things I alluded to previously when I was talking about the good things is how this is not great for taller riders. I'm 6'2". I'll show you here, you know, my knees are in a pretty high position on this. It is mid-mounted foot pegs though. These are not forward-mounted foot pegs like a lot of cruisers are gonna have. So with the mid-mounted foot pegs, you get a lot less room for your legs. Your knees are gonna be a lot higher up, especially if you're a taller rider. So if you're somebody that's, say, 6'5", 6'6", you're gonna have a really uncomfortable time on this bike. Because for me at 6'2", generally about an hour on this bike, my knees, my hips, and everything else is starting to hurt. But if you're a shorter rider, that's where it becomes a positive, because it's much easier to manage. And because of that lower seat height, you're generally gonna be able to put your feet on the ground. And for me, it's no problem. I can put my feet pretty far on the ground on both sides and flat-footed at stoplights or stop signs. There's no problem for me. Just know that if you are a taller rider, especially taller than average, you might want to look at something a little bit bigger, especially with forward foot pegs. Now, some people don't like this gap that's in the middle. It's kind of hard to see here, but there's a little gap in between the seat and the gas tank. A lot of people say that's one of the biggest aesthetics that they don't like about the bike, is that gap that's in between it. Yeah, they could have made the gas tank a little bigger, pulled it back a few more inches, maybe added up to another half gallon in the tank, made this a little bit closer to a long haul bike, but that's just a minor issue that I'd say is really just aesthetics, and that's a personal preference more than anything. It doesn't really have any issues with the bike, the way that it handles. The other couple things that I have that I'd say are bad are more personally about my bike in general. And the first one is that the aftermarket headlight is really difficult to put on. It took probably about 10 hours of research and trying different things out to hook it up myself before I finally took it to a shop. And that was the only thing that I had taken this bike to a shop for, was to hook up that front light. So again, most of the maintenance and everything that you're gonna do on this bike is pretty easy. That was the one thing that I could not figure out how to hook up on the bike. And even the people at the shop had a difficult time, which is why my gas light just continually blinks now, because of the way that they hooked it up with the circuit. But at least my turn signal works, and that is generally more important, because I can just track my gas mileage with the trip odometer. Really not a big deal. And the last thing on here is there's a high-pitched whistle that you hear. You might be able to hear it on the video, especially when you get that throttle wide open. There's quite a bit of high-pitched whistling that comes out of the intake area from what I've heard and researched. It's probably just because of the high-performance air filter, letting a lot of air in there. Something's causing that whistle because of that. But I do not know how to fix that or get that to go away. So if you do know how to get the high-pitched whistle to go away, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to make that adjustment myself so I don't have to hear that every time I, open up the throttle while I'm riding. So I'm going to pull over here in a minute. We'll take a walk around to the bike. I'll show you some of the things that I've done on the bike, some of the things that were already done on the bike as well. And yeah, we'll go from there. Alright, so let's take a look at the bike. I'll show you some of the stuff that I've done on it here. A little shot from the back. So with this bike, it does have a, I believe it's a 940 or 930 cc engine, somewhere around there. I mentioned it does have about 60 horsepower and about 60 pound-feet of torque. Do have the Vance and Hines exhaust on the back. That is what makes it sound super loud. Got the piggyback shocks on the rear here. Do have the Saddleman 2-up seat. Come over to the other side. I did add the passenger foot peg bars as well as new passenger foot pegs on the back. I added some new foot pegs on the front, kind of in between what was originally on there. I didn't necessarily want full floorboards for myself, but I want a little bit more flat surface for my feet to sit on if I do want to go on a little bit longer rides. It does have the crash bars on the side, or more so those engine guards. What I have done with this is replace the left clutch. It was broken off on the side. This definitely had been dumped over at some point because that was broken off. And you can tell there's some scratches over on the side of the mirror here. The front with the lights, this has the integrated turn signal into it, LED lights. It did have a kind of an original cowl that was on here with that little windscreen, and the LCD screen was connected to that, but that thing was shaking around. It was kind of broken on the side, so I was just taking that whole thing off and then bolted that down and added the light onto the front here. Added the new grips here. We got the Avon grips, and these are fantastic. It's a little bit more bulky, has great grip on the actual rubber part here. And then going down towards the tires, so it's got Shinko, I believe these are 705s, yeah, E705s on the front. It's a little bit more of those dual sport style, which allows me to come out here onto the dirt with this bike. Not the most comfortable on some of these bumpy roads with the shocks on the back, but the tires definitely do help. What I also did, so I put the Canon air filter on here for that high performance air filter. I did also replace the clutch plates The person I bought it from already had the new clutch plate set. They just didn't know how to do it themselves. So I went through, looked up some YouTube videos, figured it out, and changed out those clutch plates myself. I've gone through, changed out the fluid. So I've changed out the oil actually twice now. I think I'm around 4,000 to 5,000 miles total on this bike over the last year. So changed out the brake fluids, flushed the oil a couple times, and it's been running pretty good. The only downside, kind of with the gas tank, got a newer gas tank on here, but it did have, you can see that big dent on the side here from where it had fallen, which is probably at the same time that it broke off the clutch handle. They did put some aftermarket handlebars on here. The original ones were black. They were a little bit shorter. So it looks like they have an extended, probably 5-6 inch extenders on here. And they did also add the extenders for the cables for both the clutch and the throttle. So it's been a great bike for me. Definitely budget bike that you can find for somewhere in the $2,000 to $3,000 range, especially if you're negotiating with somebody, if they're looking to get rid of it quickly. You can find these for a pretty good deal. So hope you enjoyed the video. Like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell if you want to see some of these videos in the future. And I'll see you all in the next one. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Therapy on Two Wheels. Today, I'm going to be talking about this Yamaha Bolt that I bought for What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Therapy on Two Wheels. Today, I'm going to be talking about this Yamaha Bolt that I bought for